Hello and welcome to another episode of Sutton Impact Family Style. I'm Jason.
Yeah, Bill. Still not much sports to talk about this week. I was just talking to Jason offline saying that I was so desperate I did turn on MLB Network and I watched Game 5 of the 1986 NLCS between the Astros and the Mets. And Blake Gooden and Nolan Ryan were locked in a pitching duel for 10 innings. And then the relievers took over. But I was telling Jason one of the things that astounded me was after 9 innings, Nolan Ryan had thrown 135 pitches, which in today's world would be two strong starts. And he'd only given up 2 hits, and the Astros had 9, and they couldn't push a run across to give a victory. So I thought it was a tragic that Nolan Ryan did get pitched in the World Series. And Dwight Gooden pitched in 8 and never won a game, which I thought was interesting as well.
I would not have thought that. Yeah.
8 postseason games and didn't get a victory.
Huh. Yeah, there you go.
So other than that, the 2 highlight films that lasted for 10 seconds that Dan Olesky went insane about and everybody else laughed about. No more significant signings. I still feel that the Bucks are. I feel bad for the Bucks. They can't really leverage their Brady signing yet.
No.
But we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yes, we will.
So Jason and I decided that this week we'd start a series on good movies to watch while we have all this time during the shutdown here.
Yes.
People are at home. And so we're going to try and give you some movies that we think you'll enjoy either by yourself or you'd enjoy watching with your family while you're home.
Right. And these are more of our, these are like, we both came up with lists and it was hard to get down below like 30 for our top favorite movies of all time. But we're going to talk about 10 today. And again, these aren't necessarily the films we feel like critically would be considered the best films of all time, but are 10 favorite-ish.
No, if you're curious about the American Film Institute has a listing of the top 100 films as I think it was about 6 years ago, right, Jack?
Yeah.
And you can actually just check the boxes as you go through, say if you've seen them or not, and at the end it gives you your score. And so I took it the other day, I've seen 79 out of the top 100.
That's impressive.
I know, but believe it or not, of the ones I haven't seen, Lawrence of Arabia is a top 10, I've never seen it. E.T., I've never seen E.T.
Oh.
And there's another one I've never seen. But there was 3 that three that would strike you that it's odd that I hadn't seen. Those are a couple.
I know there was I think I was close to you. I had about 80 that I had seen, and I will say, I know all the movies though. Like I think they've become so ingrained in pop culture through like The Simpsons and references and things along those lines that like a good example, like it's not on this list and it probably doesn't even deserve to anywhere near it. But I've never seen Scarface, but I can quote Scarface, and I know scenes from Scarface.
It popped up in a lot of pop culture.
A lot of pop culture, exactly. So it's one of those weird situations.
Well, why don't you start us off, Jake?
All right, I already told you, I'm going to cheat on 2 of these. Because I feel like it's not like, if you're talking about a movie like Halloween and you said, I'm including all the Halloweens as one movie, they're all separate stories. It doesn't make any sense. But if it's a story that's told over the course of 3 movies, I'm going to count it as one. And I think one of my all-time favorites, and I would point out that I'm obsessed to the point where I enjoy the extended director's cuts of Lord of the Rings, all 3 films. And the extended cuts are about 4 hours apiece. And I know that sounds insane, but considering we're all in quarantine right now, it does really, they're all shot and edited, so it's not like you're getting weird footage in. It's perfectly cut into the film. It's the way Peter Jackson intended it to be seen. And it really does add to character development and story, and you get a little bit more of the outside stuff of the world. You spend a little more time with the hobbits in the first film. I think it's everything. I mean, I think you have a great story. You have fun characters. It's well acted. It's well cast. It's beautifully shot. I think it's a fun adventure for, I think you could be about any age and find a character you relate to and sort of, follow along the story. And it's, a classic good versus evil. A little bit about greed, so you can, deep dive and pretend it's about today's greed and the ring and, money and all those sorts of things. But it's a wonderful film. If I had to pick one of the 3, Fellowship, the first movie where they're getting the team together and doing all the world building, is probably my favorite of the 3. But I do feel like it's one. I know it's 3 separate books in real life, but I feel like it's one beautiful story.
And it's one of those things that they didn't make it the way they made it. If they just tried to take the book and tie it into make 1 2.5 hour movie, it would have not have been anywhere near as impactful, and it would have disappointed more people than it would have made happy.
Yes. And considering how dense that book is, and it's not, I wouldn't say to a modern audience it's an easy read, any of those films, or any of those books, sorry. But I thought they did an excellent job of turning it into, I mean, it's a little, it feels like a summer blockbuster 3 times over. So it's a movie that I think you can just watch and enjoy and escape in. When you meet, you're in this other world with elves and magic and Aragorn and Frodo, and it's just, I love those films. I have posters on my wall, like framed, like really nice, sort of that art where you can't exactly tell what it is, and when you put them all together, it looks like the trilogy. Ultimate all-time favorite.
Great. I'm going to start off. The other night I went to bed and I was flipping through some channels, and Big was on.
Okay.
And I have to say that, if you're with your family or whatever, if you're not, Big is one of those movies that I just think is just really, really an impressive movie. Tom Hanks, you can see in that movie, which is one of his very, very first movies, you can see that he's going to be a star. And he's so good in this, be able to play a little boy playing a young man in a career. And the message I take away from it is there's got to be a little boy in all of us, or a little boy or a little girl in all of us as we go through life. Otherwise, we miss out on a lot of things. And his simplistic joy of a lot of things was so well done. But then on the other hand, don't wish for something, or don't wish to speed your life along. Enjoy your life as it comes, one piece at a time. But I think he was just phenomenal in that. And the scene in F.A.O. Schwartz is a classic that everybody has seen, that with the big piano keys. But even how he just had the job where he walks in, and his job is to talk about toys, and he talks about why he likes things and why he doesn't like things. His relationship with his friend and his girlfriend relationship, I think those are all really, really classics. So I think if you're looking for something to smile about and make yourself feel pretty good, go watch Big. Watch by yourself, watch with your family, but it'll be a good one to get you through some times now that are, where a movie like that can make you smile, make you feel good, get you through your day a little bit better.
And like you said, that Tom Hanks part in the hands of the wrong actor could be really corny or stupid or over the top, but he does it with a sincerity, and it's pretty amazing how he does it.
And then I watched Forrest Gump this week also, which is probably it's a great movie. It's probably my top 30, but even his acting in that to me is incredible. He's got a lot of range of acting that I think people don't give him credit for, and I think he really delivers when he delivers a part. He delivers it well.
Well,
he's one of those actors kind of like a Jimmy Stewart of bygone days, or John Wayne, where people, no matter what he does, they usually like it, except for that one disaster movie they made. What was that one movie where he was like it was a murder mystery?
Oh yeah, that's bad.
It's terrible. That's the only thing I can ever say that he did that I think is horrible.
And oddly, I know this is sort of the pseudo-unpopular opinion, but I love Tom Hanks as a jerk. Like, I love Volunteers with John Candy, when he's a snooty rich guy that, is running away from mob debt, and he ends up in the Peace Corps, and he plays sort of an arrogant ass. But he's great in that. I love him in that movie.
Yeah, he's a very, very good actor. So go watch Big.
All right, my next film. Again, I guess I could have technically turned this into a multiple because it is part of a universe, but it's gotten so convoluted over the years. But the original Alien, Sigourney Weaver, Ridley Scott, like that movie is just so, so good. You start out in space, and it does. I mean, I'm sure to a modern audience, it made in 1979. I think it still holds up really well as far as even the technology. That part looks a little bit dated, but we start out, the crew wakes up, we meet the crew. And I think the crew has a very real feel of a crew. It doesn't feel like a bunch. It seems like it's beautifully cast, and everybody sort of has their part and their role, and you can sort of see them as real people. And then obviously they go on the wrong ship. Alien gets on board, and then it's just an incredible, horror thriller in space. Amazing film. beautifully shot. I think it holds up incredibly well. I know some people prefer Aliens to Alien, which again is a phenomenal movie. It's definitely in my top 30, probably top 50. But I do prefer the more. I think Alien is a scarier horror movie, and Aliens is more of an action movie, and I prefer the scarier horror of the two. But they're both fantastic.
Okay. I'm going to continue to stay on the lighter side right now,
Okay.
and I'm going to talk about Diner, which I think Diner came out, I think, in 1985 and 1986. Or 1982, I believe it was. I'm sorry. 1982. And it's a story of coming of age, which has a lot of people making their first movie appearance. So Kevin Bacon had been in movies before, but this was really his first lead, almost like a lead role. But Eddie, Paul Reiser was in it, and Kevin Bacon, and Ellen Barkin, and Tim Daly, and Mickey Rourke, and Daniel, what's the guy Home Alone?
Daniel Stern.
Daniel Stern, and who's the guy in all the Police Academy movies?
Gutenberg?
Steve Gutenberg are all in that movie. And it's just a really fun story about growing up in the 50s and the importance of friendship and the importance of memories. And it's got a couple tense scenes in it, but for the most part, it's a good comedy. It's fun. It's a drama. It's a drama comedy, but about the importance of friendship, of being together and having relationships, and all the trials and tribulations people go through. But I think all those actors playing very, very young in their career did an amazing job. And it was one of those Levinson films. It's set in Baltimore, like all of his movies are, but I think he just did a great job pulling that all together. And I think it's a really fun watch, particularly if you're somebody, I would say, 50 plus. If you're 50 years old and older, you'll probably enjoy it a little bit more because you'll be lost on some other things.
Okay. Well, one of my favorite time periods in film is the late 30s, 1940s Hollywood, because I love film noir. I love the detective stories, and I struggled because I probably have, between Rebecca, Maltese Falcon, and so many others. I've got probably Laura. There's like 10 or 15 that would be in my top 100. But I had to narrow it down to one today, and I had to go with Double Indemnity, which I think was maybe the first one I saw in that category. And it's Fred McMurray.
Yeah, I remember us watching that together.
Yeah, it's Fred McMurray, Barbara Stanwyck. I think it was on TMC or AMC almost weekly for a while. And it's got George, was it, who's the little guy? I can't forget his name. Oh, I wrote it down. I can't find my notes.
Peter Lorre.
Yeah, it's just a no, it's a... either way, it starts out, it's one of those movies where we start at the end and we're worked back into the beginning and we learn the whole story. It's got all the classic elements. You have your protagonist, I'm not going to call it, it's clearly not a hero. And he's either a detective on some level or looking into things on some level. And in this one, he's an insurance salesman. And he's in over his head. We have Barbara Stanwyck as a great femme fatale. And I don't want to give too much away of the movie because I think you should go watch it, and it's fantastic. But Double Indemnity is a clause where if you die in a certain way, you get double payout, is the premise of the film. And
Fred McMurray is the guy probably best known for some Disney movies like Flubber and also My Three Sons. And he's really out of character, and it's just like the Hanks movie you mentioned, Volunteers. He's playing somebody very, very different, but he's very, very good at it.
He's fantastic in it.
It's really a great story, and it's woven together really well. Barbara Stanwyck is a very, very good actress, and they pull it off. They just do a great job. That's also on my list.
Because it's just such a good film. Like I said, and it's got that cool. There's a certain feel to I think almost like pre-1950s Hollywood, or maybe even 1960s Hollywood. Like I know once Vietnam hit, we had a whole new era of film and a different attitude in film, but there's a rhythm and a cadence to the way dialogue was given in that era, and it's a really good watch. And like I said, it's a great story. And it might send you on a path of other film noir. And if you just look up, AMC's top film noir, you're going to find just tons of those great movies.
And they do film noir on Turner Classic Movies, by the way, every
And again, it's usually you have your protagonist is usually in a little bit over his head. It usually turns out to be something bigger than what he's ready for. You usually have the woman who's sort of the weakness, the femme fatale, which is a classic Hollywood trope, writing trope, and they're usually just really good. Little mystery involved, and they're all fantastic. But Double Indemnity is like a good entry level one. That should get if that doesn't get you hooked, then you're probably not going to like that genre. But you know, it's a good one to jump into.
It's very good. It's an enjoyable one. Also, if you like that, you'd probably like The Postman. Also Rings Twice,
Yes.
which was of the same genre. I also judge a movie by how many times I would watch it, or if it's on and I'm searching for something to watch, do I stop and watch that movie because there's something I want to see in that movie?
Yes.
And so, Airplane with the Zucker brothers
Classic.
is classic. I mean, it spoofs everything you could possibly spoof. It takes actors and they actually spoof their previous roles and other things. It's just really, really hilarious. Even Airplane 2 stands up. I mean, and that's a statement. But the Zucker brothers were great casting, great writing, very sarcastic, very, very, very funny, and have never, ever failed to turn. In fact, it's on right now as I'm talking to you. It's on Stars right now.
And I would say, and this counts for another classic that didn't quite make my list is Young Frankenstein, and
Yeah.
The Blazing Saddles, the Mel Brooks, and again, a lot of those films are before my time as far as comedy goes. But the one thing they do that modern spoofs don't do is the jokes are like I feel like a lot of the disaster movie, epic movie, scary movie, they're not based on jokes. They're just based on references to things that have happened in the last year, which makes them not hold up, I think, moving forward. But I feel like a lot of the Zucker Brothers stuff and Mel Brooks stuff, like they're full of real comedy jokes that hold up over time, so that anybody can watch. And I mean, there's obviously references to things that of the time you may not get, but there's enough jokes in them, enough funny moments that are universally funny and have been funny since Marx Brothers and Three Stooges and all that sort of stuff, all sort of thrown in that's just been lost in the modern spoof.
Yeah, and that's a testament. I mean, if the joke is funny to somebody in their 20s or 30s or 40s, 50s, it's a funny joke.
Exactly.
And sometimes it's a sight gag. Like I'm watching Airplane and Peter Graves in a magazine rack, and they each have captions for the different sections of the magazines, and one section was called Whacking Material. And just a sight gag. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't say anything; it's just there. And Marx Brothers were great with that too. I mean, they used Harpo and Horse Feathers is one of my favorite Marx Brothers. It is on my list. And Horse Brothers, they're trying to get him a speakeasy, and they would say a password. Well, Harpo can't speak, and the password is swordfish. So he runs to the fish store, gets a fish, and comes to the door, knocks on the door, holds up a fish, and puts a sword in his mouth. They let him in.
Yeah.
Just simple stuff. So, but Airplane is definitely holds up, and they also did Top Secret, right?
They did Top Secret, yes.
And to me, that's also a very, very funny movie.
Very early Val Kilmer.
Early Val Kilmer taking on the spy genre. The spy genre combined with like Great Escape and some other things. I mean, you can always see the movies that they're trying to spoof or pay homage to, and these are really, really funny.
And
but Airplane, don't miss it.
And I feel what's nice about their comedies, just as one more thing before I move on to the next film, is that it's a little like the Simpsons are the easiest modern example. Where like if you watch an episode of The Simpsons, you watch one scene. In every scene of The Simpsons, you're going to have like 5 or 6 jokes happening at once. And I have a thing, it's like The Simpsons in math. And they're literally like advanced calculus jokes taking place in the same scene that Homer's getting kicked in the nuts. And they did a great job of like layering the humor so that, and again, not in a snobby sort of way, but that there's something for everybody in every scene. There's the most base level thing. And then also if you're paying attention, there's something so deep that, maybe 1 or 2% of the population gets the joke, but that's what makes a great comedy, I think, is to be able to hit all these things at once.
Sure, it's similar to Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Multiple storylines, multiple plots, multiple jokes all going on at the same time.
Well, My next one is definitely a film I started watching. I watched with you, and I could have gone trilogy on this one, but I picked my favorite of the three. One of my all-time favorite directors is Sergio Leone, who made a number of Italian westerns in the 1960s. And Clint Eastwood is famous for the Man with No Name trilogy, with he and Lee Van Cleef, and the music of Ennio Morricone, who I probably just butchered his poor name. But my favorite of the three is For a Few Dollars More, which is the last film in the trilogy. And you don't have to watch. They're not like Lord of the Rings where you have to watch each one. Like you could jump into any of them because Clint Eastwood basically plays the same character in all of them, but Lee Van Cleef I think is a little bit different. But there's an Italian actor, or is a French actor, Gia. I butcher his name, but I think it's honestly one of the best portrayals of a bad guy in the history of film. The guy that plays the bad guy in For a Few Dollars More. I mean, it's a classic, slow, beautiful cinematography, great Western. But Indigo, who is like he's the guy that he's the leader of the bad guys, and he's so unhinged. And you watch him like go from like screaming to crying, and you can just see you can see that even his men are terrified of him. And he just puts on this performance as sort of the crazy, kidnapper he's kidnapped Lee Van Cleef's love of his life, and it's one of the best acting performances I've ever seen in my life. And again, it's also a compelling story, and then you have the amazing cinematography and Clint Eastwood being Clint Eastwood in the coolest Clint Eastwood way that later on our boy Timothy Olyphant sort of homaged a little bit in Justified and definitely Deadwood. And again, Sergio Leone, the other thing he does is like when you watch Hollywood westerns from that same era, it looks like Hollywood actors and models dressed up in cowboy hats. And Sergio Leone would go and find people that he thought looked interesting, and those would be his other actors and his background people. He wanted everybody to look hard and real and edgy and gritty, and those movies do all those sorts of things.
And if you're watching modern film right now, if you watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you'll pick up on that. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah, I mean, he was an incredibly influential director. Is Ennio Morricone? Is that how we pronounce the soundtrack guy?
I think that's it.
He's done soundtracks up till today. He's done some Tarantino soundtracks. And again, just it's a layered, beautiful film. And again, that performance by that guy is just so good. And he's also really good in The Red Circle, which is a French film. So.
Okay. Let's see what I'm going to do now. Well, since I've been trying to mention things I think a film we enjoy watching together, probably one of the two or three best adaptations of Stephen King's story or novel would be Stand By Me. And again, it's a coming-of-age story. It's called The Body, and he wrote it. It was called The Body. And when they made the movie, they called it Stand By Me. But it's an excellent, again, coming-of-age, four kids growing up together, sharing time, just how they grow, how they evolve. And it's not a scary story like a lot of really good Stephen King stories aren't scary. Like Shawshank Redemption is not a scary story, but it's a very good story.
And isn't that in the same book with The Body? Or is that a different series?
It could be. It could be in the same one, yeah.
Okay.
But those were really, really well done. And The Body was Stand By Me was River Phoenix. And, what's the guy, Jason's on Big Bang? Will Wheaton.
Will Wheaton, yeah.
Yeah. Will Wheaton and River Phoenix. And he did a phenomenal job in the acting and everything. And also a very young Kiefer Sutherland as playing his typical teenage hood.
He's got the cool voice. His voice just makes it such a gravelly, weird, dark voice. It's fantastic. Well, I think one of the most recent movies on my list is definitely Ex Machina by Alex Garland. It's a movie that basically has four actors in it outside of the opening scene, and Brendan Gleeson, Donald Gleeson's son, is a coder, and he's brought to the owner of the company's house to basically essentially do a Turing test. And Alicia Vikander plays, the AI robot, and she's absolutely amazing in it. And Oscar Isaacs gives such a cool performance in this movie. And if you've ever seen the Alex Garland stuff, he did Sunshine, He currently has a series that's really worth watching called Devs on FX. If you have Hulu, you can watch it for free right now. Um, he does such he paints up every scene looks like a beautiful picture. Like the angles, the colors, like everything in the scene is just perfectly put. And this movie is like a very unsettling look at AI and manipulation, and but it's such a fun watch. And there's a couple of scenes that just blow your mind. It's great science fiction. It does have it has an ending. I know like movies have an ending. I was like, depending on your thoughts on the film, you could even argue it's a pseudo happy ending. But if you haven't seen that movie, it was up for an Oscar for Best Picture. And again, like that guy his visuals in film are just phenomenal, and the story is great. And Oscar Isaacs is just you can't take your eyes off him when he's on screen. Just so good.
Great.
Have you seen that one?
I have not seen it, but now I'm going to see it.
Yeah, you need to see it.
So since we are primarily a sports show, I'm going to put a sports movie in here for everybody, and it's going to be Hoosiers.
Okay.
And I think Gene Hackman's acting in it is just phenomenal. I think that he does a great job playing. He does a great job in almost everything he's in. He's maybe a little bit underrated, which is hard to say because he's so famous, but he's a very, very solid actor. He's a great job as a basketball coach, playing with a fairly unknown cast around him. There's Barbara Hershey and, what's Shooter's name?
Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper, yeah. And those three are the names in the thing, and they're really, really good. It's a great story based upon something true. When in the Indiana High School basketball tournament, where every high school in the state plays in the same tournament, regardless of the size of the high school. So it's a true March Madness kind of a thing where anybody can win. And this was a real small town called Hickory, and they won. They beat a team from South Bend, and I forget what the real school is. It's not Hickory, but it's a very small school that actually wins and beats a team from Indianapolis. But really well done, uplifting, fantastic theme song, by the way. But really, really well done. It's a good, uplifting movie. Definitely, if it's not my very favorite sports movie, it's one and two.
Okay. And Happy Gilmore, of course, being the other, I would assume.
No, I don't think so.
Well, I'll go with what's considered it's one of the top. It's supposedly it spawned all these summer blockbusters, and it's my favorite of all of them, and that's Jaws. Anyone that knows me knows I've been obsessed with sharks. I have a shark tattooed in the middle of my back. I have every shark book, shark documentary. Love sharks, and Jaws is just such an amazing movie. It's all three of the main leads are incredibly well cast. It's a great story. It's oddly, when you think about now, with businesses trying to open back up in the midst of a crisis, it's a very apt movie because, the premise is that it's in, we have this beach and they're ready for 4th of July weekend, which is when everybody makes all their money, but there's a giant shark in the water. And the businesses want to stay open, but the sheriff wants to shut everything down. And it just has, it's got a great pace. It moves really well. It benefits from the fact that they didn't have special effects that well, so we barely see the shark, which is fantastic. We just see the shadow, we see a fin, we see part of the tail. We know how big it is. It's an amazing opening scene with the girl in the water swimming. Don't want to give too much away. But then you have when the three of them get out on the boat together. It's one of my all-time favorite scenes. You have Robert Shaw, who's sort of this gritty old shark hunter, and then he does his black eyes like a doll's eyes, the shark.
Yeah.
And it's just everyone is phenomenal in it. It's one of those movies, like I said, it's a summer block. It was considered, that Star Wars and a few others are considered to have launched the summer blockbuster that is so common today. Although it's kind of becoming more of a year-round blockbuster. They don't want anything other than blockbusters. But, just a movie you can enjoy. Like I said, you can enjoy it on multiple levels because it's sort of apt to today, but it's also just a great movie of, man versus nature. And I think all the performances are great. I think the characters are fantastic. Who plays the scientist? I forget his name.
Dreyfuss.
Richard Dreyfuss. I mean, all three of them together just have this amazing chemistry, and it all seems to fit. Because Robert Shaw is the gritted old school shark hunter. Dreyfuss is bringing in all this new equipment, And he's sort of he's got all the scientific equipment at the time to go hunt the shark, and together, along with Roy Scheider, who is great as the sheriff who's afraid of water on an island. But it does make sense in the context of the film.
And I actually saw that movie in a beach town when it first came out. And the next day when we all went to the beach, most of the people stayed on the beach, and a lot of people did go in the water.
And if you ever get a chance, we used to do this when I was a lifeguard. We would do The Little Mermaid on rafts for the kids, and then we would have everybody in the pool watch Jaws on rafts. And Jaws on a raft in a pool is a very cool experience.
I'm sure that it is.
As you're sitting and floating, watching Jaws happen, it's pretty awesome. So, Jaws, because it's awesome.
I know this one wouldn't be on anybody else's list.
Okay.
But I love Michael Keaton as an actor.
Sure.
As a comedy actor. I liked him in Gung Ho.
Yeah, Mr. Mom.
Mr. Mom. But for some reason I picked Multiplicity because he plays...
You do love that movie.
Characters. I love the movie. He
Uh-huh.
plays three other characters. Andy McDowell's in it. And he does an amazing job playing three characters that are fairly different, that are all supposed to be parts of who he is. And it's one of those things, if it's on, I'm always going to watch. I'm always going to flip on. It's kind of like Groundhog Day, which is also on my list, where I will always watch those movies when they're on. I'll never, if they're on, I stop and I watch. And now We Are the Millers has joined that for me.
Oh, wow.
So those are three that I just can't stop when it's on. But Michael Keaton, it's not the Multiplicity is a great movie. It's a fun movie, but it's like Michael Keaton at his best, and I love Michael Keaton as a comedian. Maybe because he's from Pittsburgh, maybe he has a Pittsburgh sarcastic sense of humor, but I just like him.
Hey. Like you said, movie you can watch. And my ex movie is actually, again, it's the only movie, it is a Christmas movie. So, I know it's almost Christmas a few weeks away, we're almost as far away from Christmas as you could possibly be in another month or two. But it's a movie that's the only movie I watch every year at Christmas. I never miss it. I actually watch it and its sequel because they're fantastic, and that's Home Alone. It's such a fun, beautiful little movie. I quote it all the time in daily life. I love cheese pizza, so I always say a lovely cheese pizza just for me, just like Kevin McAllister in the movie. It's completely, it doesn't make any sense. Like, you can pick plot holes all you want. Like, he doesn't have, he could have just ran to the neighbors at any point or done anything else, but instead he decides to defend his home. But that's the fun of it. Daniel Stern, who was in your movie, and Joe Pesci give absolutely phenomenal performances as the Wet Bandit. So much fun. It's like a Looney Brothers cartoon, like once they get into the house. They did a lot of the traps on Mythbusters, and a lot of the things they did to those two guys would have literally murdered them. But in the context of the comedy, it's really funny. And Macaulay Culkin, going back to Uncle Buck, which is the first time I saw him in, he just had this amazing way of having conversations with adults that I don't think I've seen in any other actor. Like, just an adorable, yet sort of wise beyond his years, but yet really naive at the same time, little conversations. And he has a number of those throughout the thing. The scene with the old man in the church, and when he finally gets his family at the end, it makes me cry every time I see it. And I know it's not exactly Christmas time, but I would watch Home. Like I said, it's like you said, if it's on, I'm always watching it. I just turn it on. I own that one in part 2, which is also, you wouldn't think you could make a sequel where they would once again leave him alone, but somehow they managed. And it's also fantastic.
Well, people that know me well know I always refer to this, but my favorite Christmas movie is Die Hard. Because it takes place at Christmas time. It qualifies as a Christmas movie. And like they said, there's a t-shirt out right now. It's not Christmas until Hans Gruber falls out of the Nakatomi Tower.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, there's Ho Ho Ho, there's the Santa Claus hat. You got a lot of Christmas stuff going on in that movie. Some of the music, yeah.
Yeah. But it's fun. In my intro, really the intro, the movie that makes Bruce Willis for the rest of his career, which actually combines an action hero with the sarcastic person he was in Moonlighting. And so he goes from moonlighting now to being an action hero. And he pulls it off, and he pulls it off well enough to do 6 Die Hard movies. 5 of which I really like.
And again, the best thing about his action heroism, at least in the early diehards, is he can get his ass kicked. Like he's not, flexing and walking past people and throwing them into walls. Like he's having to outthink them, get lucky, you know, knock things over. I mean, he's more of an everyman, so it's a much more I know relatable sounds like a weird thing to say, but a much more relatable guy.
Yeah, for sure. But I like Bruce Willis. In fact, one time I was doing a focus group for the Pirates. We were going to change the pirate logo, and I was going to have the pirate look like Bruce Willis with a scar and a beard and an earring.
Well, you want to go into my next one?
Yeah, but
This one again is pretty recent, 2016, and it shares a similar vibe. It's got it's almost like a modern film noir comedy, if that makes any sense. And that's The Nice Guys, which is
yes.
I absolutely love this. Every time this movie's on, I love it. It's Russell Crowe, Ryan Gosling, and it's my favorite Ryan Gosling. Like I know people love him as the sexy guy, but I think he plays a really good sort of out of it, down on his luck sort of guy. I think he plays that almost better than anything else. I think his comedy is where he excels. And it's Shane Black who directed Iron Man and a few other movies. Very highly rated. And again, it's he and Russell Crowe sort of team up. And again, they're two guys trying to solve a case, but the case is way bigger than them. And they're probably in a you're never going to succeed sort of way, but their chemistry is fantastic. It's got some very goofy, like there's almost a Three Stooges moment where Ryan Gosling discovers a dead body and can't quite get the words out. It's like it's just a really fun watch, and it's one of those movies like you said, like I've never turned it off. Like if it's coming on, if I see it that it's on, I watch The Nice Guys, and it's a movie I probably crack out of my I own that movie and I'll watch it every 6 months or so because it's really sharp dialogue. Like I said, Shane Black who did Iron Man and some other stuff, so it's got a lot of polish to it. It's got a good story, and again, the two of those guys together just have great chemistry, and it makes it a really fun watch.
Good, I've enjoyed that one as well. I'm going to go classic now.
Okay.
I'm going to go Cool Hand Luke, and with Paul Newman, which kind of really defines the anti-hero. Like he's not a good guy, but he's a likable bad guy. He's probably not a bad guy. He's not a good guy or a bad guy. He's just a likable guy that just can't seem not to be in trouble because he's always going to do what he thinks he has to do. And he's just amazing in it. And it probably has one of the most famous lines of all time, where Strother Martin says, after he throws Luke in the solitary confinement for like the fifth time, what we have here is a failure to communicate. And that's really what the movie's about. That the way Luke is Luke, and he can't communicate the way people want to communicate or want him to behave. He can't do that. He's got to be him. So it's a classic Paul Newman role, and it really defines him. And there's other ones, like they took one of Ken Kesey's books called Never Give an Inch, and they made that into a movie, and they called it Sometimes a Great Notion, where he plays almost the same kind of character, that he has to be who he is, and it really is a defining role for Paul Newman. And you saw it in a lot of other movies with Paul Newman. And he's always the guy railing against society. He's always the guy that's himself. In Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, he is just, he's in this situation. He's a wealthy son. He can't handle the situation. He's got to be himself. So if you like an anti-hero that's likable, Paul Newman, any of his roles, but I particularly like Cool Hand Luke with a phenomenal performance also by George Kennedy in it.
Okay. Well, I know the next one is another movie you love, and I think in the last decade, it might be one of the most perfect movies ever made, and that's Jordan Peele's Get Out. There's a lot of times where you can tell that people have watched other horror movies, and they'll homage it, but it feels like clunky and out of place. But whenever Jordan Peele does it, you can understand he understood the psychology behind it. And it's a great look at race relations and identity, and at the same time, it's a thrilling movie, and it's one of those movies that every time you watch it, you catch something else that you missed the first time. A little subtle hint, a little something there. Lathan Stayfield, who's out in Atlanta, he's one of my favorite actors right now. There's a scene where he is Again, I guess I'd rather. I mean, I'll assume people haven't watched it, but there's a scene where you're watching him and you watch him. The subtlety of the acting in his eyes just gives everything. It's so just amazing, and it's thrilling. You can see, hints of Rosemary's Baby and like classic '70s horror and old school, and it's psychological and it's really well acted and well done, and the story's compelling, and it does ask you to go on. There's a little bit of, I guess, technology that you just have to accept exists. But the one thing the movie does is it keeps it consistent. So if you accept that you can do this, and if this could be done, but it doesn't break its own rules, which is usually something in stories like, I'm willing to listen to whatever your weird story is, as long as your rules make sense within the world you've created. And like I said, I think it's beautifully shot, well acted, and it's got some funny moments, it's got some scary moments. It's so good.
Yeah, it's very, very well done movie. Um, I guess I'm going to close with, like you and I had movies that we watched together when you were growing up. Like I used to always enjoy watching John Wayne movies with my father and Errol Flynn movies with my father. And so I'm going to talk about, it's a story everybody knows. Everybody knows the story of Robin Hood. But the very, very first Robin Hood movie I've ever seen was Errol Flynn as Robin Hood, where it's definitely the guy you want to root for. The bad guys are bad enough, and he's good enough, and he's good-hearted enough. It's just a really, really well-done version of Robin Hood, and I'll always watch it. And Errol Flynn is just an amazing, amazing Robin Hood.
He is. And if you've only seen the terrible Kevin Costner version, you go watch this one.
This is a classic.
First
and
off,
yeah. Again, fun for the family.
Fun for the family, and like Robin Hood's a bit of a, he's sarcastic and a little bit of a dick in a good way, if that makes any sense. Like he has to be, and like it's a, like you said, it's a fun movie. It's very bright and colorful and beautifully shot. I only like 3 Robin Hood movies. That one, the Disney one with the fox, and of course Carrie Elways from Princess Bride as Robin Hood and Robin Hood Men in Tights, the Mel Brooks movie, which goes back on the airplane days, which is also still a fantastic Robin Hood movie and comedy. So this was this is our last one. That was 10 already?
Oh yeah, I think we're easily at 10.
All right, well, I have so many good ones left on my list. We're going to probably do a part
2 next week.
Your part 2. So I'll close it out with, we just mentioned Carrie Elways. I'll close it out with The Princess Bride. I think this is on like a billion people's list of our favorite all-time movies. It seems like this movie is about as big. I can't imagine anybody else in any of the parts. From Christopher Guest as the Six-Finger Man. The guy that plays Prince Humperdinck is fantastic. Fred Savage is the kid who's being told the story to, is precocious and adorable and just the right amount of everything. I can't imagine anybody else being the Man in Black other than Carrie Elways, who is the perfect mix of sort of sarcastic and funny and vulnerable. Like Robin, Wright Penn, who's become a fantastic actress as the princess. And it's just a really fun, like, it's a fairy tale and also a spoof on a fairy tale. You have so many funny, memorable scenes. Like, you can quote probably 50 scenes in it. You have Andre the Giant throwing in an incredible performance, the giant wrestler who would drink 50 beers on an airplane. And it's just, like I said, I just think it's an incredible watch. You have Carol Kane and Billy, what's his name? Billy Crystal. Yeah, I mean, it's full of like, you have Carol Kane and Billy Crystal in like little tiny parts, just crushing their parts. And, you have, Monty Python people and things along the Spirited In. And like, again, I think it's one of those movies that as a kid, you could just watch it and enjoy it from a fairy tale standpoint. As an adult, there's so many like funny, references and sarcasm. It's an amazing, amazing movie.
Yeah, Robin Wright Penn is an interesting actress. Because I can think of 3 movies, and she's very, very dramatically different in all 3.
Oh, yeah.
Like, she's Jenny in Forrest Gump. She's the princess in the movie you just discussed. And she's Bruce Willis's wife in Unbreakable. And the 3 performances are so varied. They're so dramatically different. They're not the same. They're not anywhere near. They're very complex characters.
Yeah, and her role on the political show that was on Netflix that was remade on the British series where she plays Kevin Spacey's wife. She's also it's a very different role and a very fantastic performance on her part as well.
Well, like we said, we'll finish part 2 next week of the movies. And we've got, like I said, we're movie people, so we've got quite a few. So I'm sure that hopefully you'll have watched a bunch of these and then tweet us your responses, let us know what's going on, what you liked and what you don't like. If you have some suggestions, movies you want to know if we've watched, or if you want some feedback on your movie, see what we think about it, fine, just tweet it to me at Sutton_ImpactU, and I'll definitely respond, take your suggestions. We've also talked about that we want to do a show. We're going to do a show on books, and we did our music show last week. We'll do a TV series show, and which will include Netflix and everything else where you can download. But hopefully we can keep this up until we get our sports back.
Yeah, and I suppose as we close,
I've been watching Peaky Blinders this week. I've watched the first two seasons, and I have really, really enjoyed it. And I've loved the fact that each season ends with what I would call an unbelievable cliffhanger.
Yeah, it's a really great show if you haven't watched it yet. Like, definitely.
I'm excited to watch season 3 tonight. Now, Jason, let me ask you a question. We didn't talk about this. Somebody's telling me I need to watch Tiger King.
I watched Tiger King.
And?
It's an entertaining white trash. I mean, it's watching a bunch of horrible people that you can't believe are alive and can do the things they can do. It hits host clone because the one woman, Carol, who, as you've seen from the memes, may or may not have murdered her husband, but she definitely did, runs that tiger sanctuary in Tampa that people say is a horrible place. So I mean, it's an enjoyable thing to have on in the back. Like, you don't have to pay complete attention, but it's a really bizarre cast of characters you can't believe quite as real. And I mean, I think it seems like based on meme culture and social media, almost everybody's seen it at this point. But I'll throw out this too. If you have Amazon Prime, there's a movie called Blow the Man Down, which is like a little hour, 30-minute, I guess I would say mystery with I want to say there's like maybe a 10% bit of the Fargo sort of to it. It's got a phenomenal cast. It's a lot of people that you've seen in other things. Margot Martindale is phenomenal in it. It's got a lot of June Squibb, who's Susie. She's what is she from that you might have seen? About Schmidt, Nebraska, In and Out. It takes place in Maine in a fishing village, and it's about women doing what they can to survive. But it's also a murder mystery, and it's a really fun hang. The one criticism I have is I feel like the ending could have been like 30 minutes longer than it is, and it feels like they just tie everything up in like 5 minutes. I don't know if they ran out of budget or what happened, but it just feels very quick. It's satisfying. Like, you get the satisfying conclusion. Like, you hit all the beats you would expect it to hit, but you just feel like you might have wanted a little more explanation. See it a little more than just be told, boom, it happened. If that makes any sense.
Sure.
But we figured we'd try to there's a TV and a movie recommendation for this week. And I guess, if you haven't watched Tiger King, that way you'll understand all the memes. And again, like I said, you can just watch a couple of episodes and it's a fine show to be watching. And when it grabs you, it grabs you. When it doesn't, you can look on your phone. So it's that sort of watch.
All right, so we'll be back on this. We'll keep doing our research, finding great things for you to watch. Meanwhile, stay safe, stay home, order out, patronize your local restaurants, tip well, please. Understand that if everybody can do a little bit, we can make this better and get through it all together. But please order from your local restaurants. If you got to go pick it up, go pick it up. Do whatever you need to do to help these people get through these tough times. And let's keep as many people working as we can.
And again, if you're worried about the food itself, there's nothing wrong. They say gift cards are a fantastic way to support the business as well. And then when everything gets back, then you can go to a restaurant, spend the gift card you bought. So it's almost like you're buying your meal in advance.
Yep.
All right. So until next week.
We'll talk to you.